and welcome to the Angelica Malin Show, a talk show where inspiration meets conversation. I'm your host, Angelica Malin. I'm a global MC and moderator, and I work at conferences all around the world. On today's episode, I'm joined by a great guest. Tawny Lara is the author of Dry Humping and the co-author of the Sobriety Deck. She's the co-host of the Recovery Rocks podcast and co-founder of Botanical Beverage Parentheses. She's reported on mental health and sex positivity since 2016 and writes a Substack called Beyond Liquid Courage. Grab your coffee and settle in for a great conversation. Tawny, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. So I ask all my guests the same question opening out, which is, can you tell me about one conversation that changed the course of your life in some way?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, of course. I will say one of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was in a writing class. A teacher named Ruth Dannon, she's also a poet. She shared the writing advice, let yourself write bad. And that completely blew my mind open because I was always so obsessed with being a perfectionist. And that perfectionism got in the way of my writing. And as she gave me the permission to just download and brain dump and get words on the page, and my book would not exist without that advice.
I love that advice. It gets rid of our perfectionism. You describe yourself as the sober sexpert. Can you tell me about how you led to being a sober sexpert and what made you interested in the intersection between sobriety and sex?
Yeah. So, when I first quit drinking in 2015, the thought of dating, let alone hooking up without alcohol, really scared me. And there were not resources on this subject. So I ultimately wrote this book for me. This is the book that I needed when I was newly sober. And I am a millennial, a child of the internet. And when I was struggling with this, with sober dating, I took to the internet and I'm like, is anyone else struggling with this? I can't be the only one. And, Ruby Warrington, who coined the term sober curious, a fellow Brit, she also called me the sober sexpert when we did an event together, and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah. And what are some of the biggest myths that you think around sober intimacy that you would love to debunk?
Well, people think drunk sex is better. They think drunk intimacy is better. And if anyone says that, or if anyone feels that way, I would ask them why. I would encourage them to really dig deep and think about why they think drunk intimacy and drunk dating is better. If you think that it's because you feel more confident, then I would encourage people to find confidence in other ways. If you think drunk sex is better, I encourage you to, or if you think drunk intimacy is better because there's less inhibitions, I would challenge you to actually ask for what you want in the bedroom instead of relying on alcohol to get you there. And I would also say that we need inhibitions to be safe.
So is this a confidence thing? Do you think people are drinking when it comes to intimacy because they're nervous to ask for what they want?
Based on my personal experience and my journalistic research over the last 10 years, yes, absolutely. There's many reasons that people use alcohol, of course. But the intersection of my book, where, my book discusses that intersection of alcohol-free dating and relationships, but it's liquid courage. It's not just the alcohol. It's relying on alcohol to feel more confident.
And with your own journey with sobriety, was there a particular reason why you quit alcohol? And what's the effect been in terms of your mental health since going sober?
Yeah, so just super quick backstory. I was a binge drinking party girl. I binge drank very heavily until I blacked out for almost 15 years. I moved to New York City in the summer of 2015. And shortly after that, I realized that I had a drinking problem because I was hanging out with people who drank normally. I was no longer drinking with fellow bartenders and fellow party girls. I was drinking with people who could drink normally in New York City. And that really gave me a chance to reevaluate my relationship with substances. And this quick, moment of realization, I was in a pub in Soho talking about how I don't have time to write, and I left that pub thinking, you just spent 4 hours in a pub with your friends talking about how you don't have time to write. Maybe there's a connection here with your creativity and your alcohol abuse. And fast forward to, now 9 years later, I haven't had any alcohol since.
What is the hardest part of a sobriety journey in your experience?
Really getting to know who you are without alcohol was was and is still very difficult because, like you said, a lot of people use alcohol to self-medicate for undiagnosed mental health issues. That was definitely me. So when I quit drinking, I got into therapy, I found support groups, and I realized I have anxiety, I have PTSD, and I was self-medicating. So now I have these healthy and healthier coping skills to deal with these mental health issues. Whereas before, my mental health issues, they were really just driving the bus, and I was along for the ride. And I feel like I have more control now in sobriety.
Right, because it's masking what's going on.
Exactly.
It's a crutch and you might not be able to see it. And for people who drink often in social situations or perhaps to relieve some kind of social anxiety, what's your advice when they're looking to cut down or cut out alcohol?
Well, first, give yourself grace. Be nice to yourself. And just, I think, being self-aware of, you know what, I'm drinking a little more lately. Or when I'm around this person, I drink more. I think just knowing that is huge. And then if you want to make some changes from there, try a dry month. Try having 1 drink instead of 5. Figuring out what exactly works for you. And don't really compare your relationship with alcohol to other people's relationships with alcohol. Just really hone in on what alcohol does to you personally.
Your book, Dry Humping, which is a fantastic title, by the way. It's all about sober dating. What was the most surprising thing you learned in the process of writing it?
I learned that by honing in on the liquid courage angle, I was able to access way more people. Initially, the first draft of my book was for people in recovery, like myself. Whereas, I got a really incredible edit from my editor saying, what if, you open this book up, you ride the wave that, Sober Curious is having a movement. Let's open this up to people who still drink alcohol, who do dry months, who, why don't we try that? And that completely changed the game because I realized when I did the rewrite, I'm really sharing the same advice, whether you're doing a dry month or you're 10 years in recovery, the advice is still the same. It's learning how to feel more confident and getting to know who you are without alcohol. And
what's your advice for people who are not drinking and perhaps going on dates with people who do drink and navigating those conversations? I have a friend actually who's teetotal, has been for quite a long time and always feels a bit nervous about mentioning it and often will wait to tell and sort of just say, I'm not drinking tonight, doesn't want to perhaps reveal. Yeah. So what's your advice for people who are a bit scared of bringing it up?
Again, you're not alone. This is a super common question. There's actually an entire chapter in my book on this subject where, I share like you could put sober on your dating app profile, or you can wait until you meet IRL. You can wait until you're DMing. It's ultimately up to you, and just feel the situation out. And I would just say, if you sharing that you don't drink or that you're trying to drink less, if someone feels attacked or confronted by that person probably doesn't have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
I honestly, when I was dating, I saw that my sobriety was somewhat of a filter. It kind of weeds people out.
It weeds out the people that are just kind of intolerant.
Which again, the confidence comes into that because I was a people pleaser. I drank because I wanted to make other people more comfortable, make myself more comfortable. I wanted to be this version of myself that I thought other people wanted me to be, and alcohol helped me do that. And you don't need the alcohol, I promise.
And also it opens up different ideas of what you can do on a date. Like you might not want to meet in a bar. And I think like doing fun dates is nice. Like my husband and I went to a yoga class like quite early on in our relationship as like a date, and it was really fun. And things like that are a bit different. So you don't have to just sit in a pub, which is perhaps not always the most enjoyable thing.
Well, absolutely. And even just like meeting for coffee can have a similar vibe of getting a drink. You're still just sitting next to each other or sitting across from each other and just talking at each other.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to a museum, go for a walk, go roller skating, go do something. And it's going to help you get rid of those first date jitters, which is very important. But you're also really present with that person. You're talking about a sculpture that's right in front of you. And you're talking about maybe a memory that it might bring up or what it reminds you of, instead of just honing in on the where are you from? What do you do for a living? It can make an activity-based date can just be more fun. What's
the response when people say, I could never date sober, or that must be so boring? What do you normally say to them?
I would just challenge them to give it a shot, pun intended. If you think sober dating is boring, why? I would ask you why you think it's boring.
With our relationship with alcohol, I do feel like the sober curious movement has gone quite far, and we're moving perhaps towards a healthier relationship with drinking. But do you think that's the case, or do you still think it's pretty ingrained in certain situations, just alcohol's everywhere?
It's a little bit of both, and also we have to acknowledge that this sober curious movement is happening while cannabis is becoming more legalized and less stigmatized. So yes, people are drinking less alcohol and they're using more cannabis, they're doing psychedelic mushrooms. So this is happening at the same time. But I agree with you. I think the future is mindful drinking. I think the future is moderate substance use. And some people, like myself, I can't drink alcohol. I know that about myself. But I know that there are some people who they can take some time away from alcohol and then find a healthy relationship with it again. So it just, everyone's personality, everyone's relationship with alcohol is just so different.
Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about your brand, your non-alcoholic drinks brand, and also about your deck?
Yeah.
We have it here.
Yes, we have parentheses. It's a non-alcoholic spirit. It's I was a whiskey drinker back in my party girl days. And when I quit drinking, I really missed having a stiff drink, like a strong non-alcoholic drink. And my husband, he was a sommelier who quit drinking, and he got really into fermentation. And I realized that bite that I craved, we could get that with fermentation, with our artisanal vinegar. So that's what parentheses is. It's a really bold non-alcoholic spirit.
Fantastic. And tell me about the deck as well.
Yes. My podcast co-host and I, we host a podcast called Recovery Rocks about recovery and rock and roll. And we've been doing it for 6 years now. And we sat down and looked at our most popular episodes and the conversations that kept coming up. And we distilled them into a card deck called the Sobriety deck that I would say is like tarot meets sobriety self-help. Pull a card, and it could just give you some writing prompts and thinking prompts.
That's such a great idea. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, if you had one takeaway of this whole journey that you've been on, this self-care journey, this mental health journey, what is the thing that stands out to you, and what is the thing that you'd like other people to know about perhaps going on their own sobriety journey that they should be aware of?
I think it's just super, super important to get crystal clear on your why. And by that, I mean, why do you drink? Why do you not drink? What does alcohol do for you? These are the questions that I think we can learn so much about ourselves if we really sit with and answer them either internally, journal, bring them up with a therapist. If you can address these issues, maybe temper your alcohol relationship. Maybe it won't progress into a full-blown addiction if you're able to answer these questions right now. Don't wait to hit rock bottom before you reevaluate your relationship with alcohol.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Tawny, if people would like to find out more about you, how can they find you and connect with you?
Yes, please buy my book, Dry Humping. It shows that I like to talk about heavy stuff, but with a sense of humor. And just head to my website, tawnylara.com. That's where all my work is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. There'll be a new episode out every Tuesday. And you can connect with me on social media to see all the behind the scenes of making the show.